Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. With our previous press conferences, the secretary will have a message for all of you, and then we will open up to questions if you indicated on your RSVP that you want to be called on for a question. I will remind all of you that I'm looking at the spreadsheet with your name on it, so if your screen name does not indicate you are who you are, then I might have trouble finding you even if you told me that you want to ask a question. So your screen name needs to in some way match up with what I have here on my RSVP list. Thank you very much for helping us out with that. Good morning, Secretary, and go ahead.
Good morning. I think what Wanda is saying is that she's imposing an ID requirement. So make sure that you meet that because you want your vote to count. So morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today for a weekly Election 2020 press conference. We are going to be starting twice weekly press conferences beginning this Friday. So the more the merrier. So I'll start, as always, with the latest numbers. Our total voter registration numbers as of today, or as of this morning, were 8,962,812. So, you know, I'm not a betting woman usually, but I think we might just hit 9 million. So please tell everybody you know who's not registered to vote to do so now. The deadline is October 19th, so they still have 5 days for us to hit 9 million, and that will in fact be an all-time high in Pennsylvania. The breakdown of that 8.96 million is 4,192,729 Democrats, 3,484,819 Republicans. Independents are 886,613. And other registrations are 398,651. The total approved mail-in and absentee ballot applications statewide are 2,664,882. Of those, I know last week you asked me for the party breakdown, so I have those this week. 1,722,693 are Democratic, 652,516 are Republican, and 289,673 are other. The total number of ballots that have been confirmed and marked as being prepared for mailing or in the process already of being mailed are just under 2.6 million, or 97%. So just under 2.6 million are in the mail or about to be in the mail. And that includes approximately 65 counties. So there are still a couple that have not gotten theirs in the mail stream yet, but overwhelmingly they have. Ballots returned. I told you that those numbers would increase a lot, and they did. The ballots marked as returned so far are 517,818. 517,818. Last week we had under 100,000 that were marked. So approximately 20% of the ballots that have already gone in the mail have already been returned, which is fantastic. Approximately 23 counties expect to already have at least one secure drop-off location, and/or satellite county election office to allow in-person services in more communities and early voting services in some of those. You can find locations of both the drop boxes and the drop-off locations, as well as the counties that have satellite county election offices. You can find those all at votespa.com. So of those 23, 7 of those counties have satellite offices. Tens of thousands of voters, including me, have already voted in person early and/or used other in-person satellite office services. So I voted in person on Friday. I now have gotten confirmation that my ballot was in fact cast, which I, of course, had hand delivered it right as I was doing there. It was very easy. Highly encourage everyone to consider this as an option. You still have weeks to go ahead of Election Day where you could go in person, and apply for your ballot, have your eligibility checked, fill out your ballot, and cast it all in one visit. Okay, total number of permanent annual voters, which I'll talk about in a bit, to date, are over 2 million Pennsylvanians have marked that they want to be permanent annual voters and automatically get a ballot in the mail. And this is updated every year. So at the beginning of every year, those voters who have signed up will get a mailer that will ask them if they want to receive mail-in ballots that year for every election that year. And they can choose each year whether to re-up that or to vote in person. Over 2 million voters have signed up. And since last week, we've gotten more volunteers to apply to be poll workers. So we've now, since the primary, had over 56,000 submissions of volunteers who are interested in serving as poll workers, this is all just through the Votes PA website. So it's truly incredible. Okay, as I said, voter registration deadline is rapidly approaching. It's October 19th. Please tell everybody you know to register to vote before then. And they can do so online at votespa.com. They should also check the status of their voter registration, make any changes to their registration, all at votespa.com, or they could do that in person at their county election offices or through the mail. So back to the permanent annual status, we understand that some voters are receiving a mail ballot for the general election and don't remember applying for one. So just a reminder, Pennsylvania does not automatically send mail ballots to voters. Voters must apply for those ballots, have their eligibility checked, have their identification confirmed either through their PennDOT ID or social security number or some other approved form before the ballot is sent to them. However, Act 77 also created a new option, as described, that allows voters to sign up automatically to annually receive mail ballots for each election held that year. So the voters who are receiving ballots fall into two categories. Either they've applied to do so since the primary, or they checked that box, and it was a check box on either the voter registration form or the mail-in ballot form before the primary, saying that they wanted to be a permanent annual voter. So we've been sending emails and doing other forms of communications to make sure that voters understand that this is probably what happened. Any voter who wants to verify this can just call their county election office. They could get that phone number or contact information on votespa.com and confirm. But those are the only two ways that voters get ballots, is if they've applied directly, recently, or they signed up to be a permanent annual mail voter. Okay, Department of State has also become aware that depending on when and how counties update, ensure their tracking information on a voter's application and ballot being sent, that the ballot status tracker doesn't always reflect precise dates or information. So we're working with the counties. This is all brand new this year, of course, because of Act 77. So we're working to remind and train the counties on how to do this in a way that most accurately triggers that information in that ballot status tracker. So actually this afternoon, there's another training for the counties. We've resent out in the last couple of days step-by-step instructions. So we want to make sure that the counties trigger those notifications and the ballot status tracker phases most accurately so that voters get the clearest information. Because our time is now shorter, as more ballots are mailed in these weeks to come, even in the days to come, the tracker is going to be more accurate because the counties are turning around the distribution of those ballots much more frequently. What else? We continue to urge the legislature to take one small, simple step that would indisputably benefit all Pennsylvania counties, voters, candidates, and the nation as a whole by giving the counties more time to pre-canvass the millions of ballots that voters are casting by mail. We continue to call on the legislature to do so, and do so as soon as possible, as we have been urging since March. Some of you have been asking about election night returns. The Department of State is implementing changes to its election night reporting that will provide breakdowns of votes cast by the various methods. So in addition, of course, to in-person voting at the polling place, we'll also be providing information on votes by mail and absentee ballots, and by provisional ballots as the totals are reported by the counties. Additionally, we are working towards and exploring the best means to break down and report the remaining ballots that are cast but not yet counted. So we're working through those details. We will be providing you with how that's going to be shown, broken down by county, so that you all can track not only what's initially already been canvassed, but what results are still to come. So our goal is to provide as much transparency as possible on how far along the counties are as they carry out this critically important, accurate counting process. So we'll update you as more details are available. A few legal updates. Over the weekend, the federal court ruled against the Trump campaign and other various candidates on all claims in the federal district court. So that was a very strong decision for voters, for democracy in Pennsylvania, on really all the issues involved in that case, which was everything from drop boxes to signature to comparisons and so forth. It's a 138-page, very comprehensive and thorough decision, and a great victory again for the voters of Pennsylvania. No decision has been issued yet on the King's Bench petition with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And no decision has been issued yet on the Republican Party's request to the United States Supreme Court to stay the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision allowing mail ballots to be accepted if received by 3 days after Election Day. I'll really quick end with a reminder that Pennsylvanians now have 3 ways of voting. So of course you can vote by mail. We really, really urge every voter to, if you haven't applied yet, apply today. Do not wait. Go to votespa.com, or you could call 877-VOTES-PA and ask for an application to be mailed to you. Return your ballot as soon as possible, either by mail right away or hand deliver to your county election office or other designated drop box or drop off location by 8 p.m. on Election Day. And again, locations of those drop boxes are posted on the Votes PA website. You can also do what I did, vote early in person by mail ballot at your county election office or satellite county election office. In order to do the whole process, including applying and casting your ballot all in one day, you need to do that by 5 p.m. on October 27th. Or, of course, you could vote in person at the polls on Election Day. Polls will be open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Wear a mask, practice social distancing. We are providing counties with masks, hand sanitizer, tape to mark social distancing, and lots of other supplies to keep the polling places safe. And now I'm happy to take your questions.
We're going to start with Mark Scolforo from AP, and on deck will be Tom Shortell from the Morning Call. Go ahead, Mark.
Good morning, Secretary.
Good morning.
So you made reference to it, but the no excuse mail-in ballot law last fall obviously didn't anticipate these millions of ballots. With less than 3 weeks out, if the legislature does nothing, do you see the sheer volume of people exercising that right as something counties are ready for or not? If nothing happens with early pre-canvassing, can you say whether the relatively uneventful primary election will be repeated?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what I've been saying for months and months is that the single best way we could avoid any delay is easy. How often do you have a circumstance where the solution, which is a legislative one, costs nothing, 100% solves the problem, and has no negative side effects? And that's simply to give the counties more time to count ballots, right? To pre-canvass those ballots. No results will be reported. This is the most straightforward, easy, no-brainer, solution to this problem that, rarely do you find. So that would solve all the problem. Absent that, Mark, I still think the counties are really prepared for this. In the primary, they went from, as you know, the last presidential primary, we had 84,000 absentee ballots statewide. We went from 84,000 to nearly 1.5 million, 17 times as many, without sufficient staff, without sufficient equipment. Since then, they've been staffing up. They've bought all kinds of equipment, including sorters and envelope, slicer openers, extractors, and of course the high-speed, high-capacity scanners. So they're in very strong position to get this done. But can they get it done by midnight on election night? No, they absolutely can't in the larger counties where they have hundreds of thousands of mail ballots. So again, we urge the legislature to implement this very clear solution, easy, supported by every one of 67 counties, and I'm willing to bet supported by nearly every one of the almost 9 million registered voters in Pennsylvania and the millions and millions of people across the nation. This benefits everyone. So we will be ready. I expect the counties to be in great shape, but would love to give them more time.
We're going to go with Tom Shortell from the Morning Call now. Next up will be Asha Prihar from PLS. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. Secretary, I've received calls from across the state from voters who have been waiting weeks for their ballots to arrive. And these are not voters who are in counties where they only just went out. I'm talking about ballots that they can tell through the tracker were sent 3 weeks ago. What's going on with these delivery times? What do you say to voters who have been waiting weeks for their ballots to arrive?
Thanks, Tom. So, I think most people are receiving ballots now. So I'm not sure when you got the calls and which counties, everything's county specific, right? So we have information about when the ballots actually went out. As I mentioned earlier, there were counties who triggered that notification date on the ballot status tracker at a point before the ballots were actually in the mail. So that's what we're trying to make sure that the counties don't trigger that before actually the ballots are in the mail. But I will say that—
Secretary, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I'm referring to Berks County. I believe that went out on September 21st, and they confirmed it on their Facebook page. So we're talking 3 weeks.
And you think, and people this week have not been receiving their ballots?
I'm muted. Thank you. As of last week, they had not received their ballots.
I'm happy to check in with the county election office. Berks County, as you said, they have already sent them out. I have not heard of any particular problems in Berks County, but I will check with our team to make sure that they follow up with Berks County. Really the overwhelming majority of counties, the voters are receiving their ballots. And like I said, 20% have already been returned. So that tells you a lot that even just in the last week, hundreds of thousands of voters have not only received, but also returned their ballots. I know just from personal notes, like I live in Bucks County. My daughter got her email notification last week. She's away at college. She received her ballot within a couple of days, returned it very quickly. So it does seem to be working in most places, but we will check in on Berks County, and thank you for that report.
Okay, we'll go with Asha Prihar from PLS, and after that will be followed by Andy Mahalchik from WBRE. Go ahead, Asha.
Hi, good morning, Secretary.
Morning.
Yeah, so something that you mentioned was the issue of poll workers and poll worker recruitment. And like you said, there's been a lot of interest overall, but you mentioned last week that that doesn't necessarily mean that like every polling place will be adequately staffed because people can only serve in their district. So I was just wondering if there are any patterns that you've noticed in districts that might still be understaffed. And so like historically, like long lines at polling places have tended to be concentrated in precincts that are majority minority, which is something that we're already seeing in early voting places, or like places that have early voting like Georgia. So is there anything that the state's doing to make sure that something like that doesn't happen come election day in Pennsylvania?
Yes, so it's one of the areas that we've been checking in regularly with the counties on, so that we make sure we know, are there any counties that are still, in a difficult place. I mean, I can't, say strongly enough how incredibly thankful we all are for the overwhelming support from people across the Commonwealth volunteering. But as I said last week, and I will continue to say probably all the way through Election Day, sometimes those vacancies happen at the last minute. The counties might think that they have fully staffed, and somebody may, not be able to serve at the last minute. So for anybody who's still interested in applying, don't think we're done. There are still counties that have some vacancies. We are in better shape than I think we've probably ever been in the history of voting, or at least in modern times. It's really tremendously encouraging and heartwarming how many people have volunteered to participate in the democracy. But please, we urge anybody who's still considering it to do so. Go to votespa.com. You could sign up. We'll connect you with your county, and the county will let you know if they've already filled their positions. But there are some counties that are reaching out to these volunteers, by the way, with other ways that they can help. So, thank you for pointing it out. And you are absolutely right. It tends to be in lower income communities of color, where polling place resources across the board, whether it's human resources or other resources, may be most challenged. And so we want to make sure that every polling place, no matter where they are fully staffed and fully resourced.
Okay, Andy Mahalchik. I'm not seeing Andy. Andy, if you're with us, would you raise your hand, please? Okay, we're going to go with Mark Naquette from Bloomberg News. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, Secretary. We're not getting very many signals that the legislature is preparing to pass something before the election on pre-canvassing. Do you think some kind of compromise deal is still possible? And if counties can't start processing these mail-in and absentee ballots until 7 a.m. on Election Day, what's your latest estimate of how long the count will take?
I still think there's hope. For every day that there's conversations still being had, I will continue to say that there's hope. If those conversations end, then that will be that. Obviously, we no longer have the amount of time that we were advocating from the get-go. We originally were talking about 3 weeks of pre-canvassing. We are now under 3 weeks from Election Day, so that won't be happening. But I think there's still time for this to happen. Very much continuing to urge the legislature to do this. Whether it's a matter of days or a matter of weeks, the counties, I think, will be incredibly grateful. Again, without that, I still am in the same place I was last week. I think canvassing of the ballots of the overwhelming majority of ballots. Again, just to clarify, we all know that overseas and military ballots don't have to come in for another week after Election Day. We also know that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision are allowing ballots that are postmarked and cast by Election Day to be received for up to 3 days later. So, provisional ballots take longer, but for the overwhelming majority of ballots that are cast on or before Election Day, I think we're talking about counties being able to canvass those ballots within a matter of days, not talking within a matter of weeks. I'm talking about days. So I have high confidence. The conversations I've had with the counties, many of them are planning on counting 24/7 to get as many done in that initial period as possible. So kudos again to the counties who, as always, are stepping up above and beyond and are the most incredible public servants I have ever had the pleasure to work with in my life.
We will go with Teresa Bakel from the York Daily Record now. Barbara Miller, Observer Reporter, will be up next. Go ahead, Teresa.
Good morning, Secretary.
Morning.
I wanted to follow up on Tom's question. I'm also hearing from voters who say they haven't received their mail-in ballot yet. And one was from Bucks County. She said that she was supposed to receive it, and I think it was sent out a couple weeks ago. But another question I have about this is, what if a voter, for example, has to go for, let's say, surgery or something ahead of time, and they don't get their ballot in time, but they're not going to be able to go to the polls either? What options do they have if they signed up for a mail-in ballot, but don't receive it in time, and they, can't go to the poll on election day? What options do they have?
So I'll answer your first question first. So Bucks, I know, and again, it may be that the trigger date on the ballot status tracker wasn't accurate because of when it was clicked. So, but what I can tell you is Bucks County started sending out their ballots last Wednesday or Thursday, and they're sending out something like 20 to 30,000 ballots a day. So, and I think they got somewhere in the range of 150,000 in this first batch of mailing out. So if somebody applied, in that first batch, if they haven't already gotten their ballot this week, I expect that they'll be getting it any day. Because again, if you do the math, that should be concluded. And I know other people that have been receiving them this week. So they can always call, by the way, the Bucks County Board of Elections. There's contact information on votespa.com and on the Bucks County Board of Elections website for who to call, the number to call, email, and so forth. That's for them to reach out. So to your second question, there's a process called emergency absentee voting in Pennsylvania that protects people who are ill or in the hospital or so forth prior to the election. So I see Deputy Secretary Jonathan Marks on. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to give an overview of the process for what people need to do to apply for and receive an emergency absentee ballot.
Sure. There's two things. First, I think there may have been, if the person requested a ballot already got the ballot and they are now disabled, even if that's temporary, they do have the option of having a third party deliver their ballot, provided that they fill out the appropriate paperwork. There's a designation form that they can use designating somebody to deliver their balloting materials for them. If they end up in the hospital or end up ill, at a time before the normal deadline to apply for an absentee or mail-in ballot, there is an emergency process during that last 7 days before an election. There are forms on our website, and the county actually, they can designate, again, somebody to deliver their balloting materials for them, deliver the application, pick up the ballot, take the ballot to the voter. The voter fills it out, and then that designee can return the ballot. And there is a provision in that emergency absentee request that in the event that a voter cannot find a designated agent, actually the county would be able to do that on behalf of the voter. So they would designate somebody from the sheriff's office or someone else to go out and deliver the balloting materials for them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll go now to Barbara Miller from the Observer Reporter, and on deck will be Emily Previty from WITF. Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay, after last week's Zoom, I asked our Washington County Director of Elections if she was aware of any additional stats that were to be provided on election night, such as number of outstanding mail-in ballots not counted. And she was unaware of any change in the reporting of these other categories. So at what point did you contact or have you contacted County Elections Director, and when might we see an advance of the Department of State website that would show these various categories?
So we will have more for the latter part of your question, your second question. We will notify you as soon as we have that available. So some preview of what we have, but it's going to be very basic. I mean, as you might imagine, making changes between the, June 2nd and November, we didn't want to make radical changes, but we wanted to provide more information. So we're basically probably going to end up with two places. One, the main ENR website that you've all seen, but it's going to have the breakdown of the ballots. So instead of just saying in-person votes, which is what it historically had until later when absentee ballots were added, this will break it down. So as the counties count mail-in and absentee ballots, and this is being, and Jonathan can probably talk about we've been working with all the 5 voting system vendors that all 67 counties have, and the counties have been, and data format and upload for the ballots remaining to be counted. That part may be something that we do centrally because we have access to Shore to see how many ballots have already been cast, right? And then when the county uploads how many ballots have been counted, I mean, it's subtraction, right? So that may not be an extra thing that we're asking from the counties because we'll be able to track that centrally. But they're all in the loop on, they're going to be reporting based on ballot type. Jonathan, Deputy Secretary Marks, I don't know if you can talk to, and I don't know if today's,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, we had actually this morning we had our mock election with the counties where we sort of walked through the election night reporting functions with county election staff, and we'll have additional information, additional trainings for counties between now and election day on that process and a number of other things. There are statutory requirements already in place for reporting unofficial returns even after election night. But in the primary, we beefed that up and had liaisons reaching out to counties on a daily basis to get updated numbers as ballots were coming in. But as the secretary mentioned, a lot of the data is actually tracked in the statewide voter registration system. So most of the data we'll be able to get on our own. What we're going to have to collect from counties are things like provisional ballot numbers and other things that don't necessarily go into the system immediately. And we'll be working with counties over the next several weeks to sort of define exactly what we need, when we need it. And again, we'll have liaisons that are going to be reaching out to the counties on a daily basis to get updates on where they're at with tabulation and get those additional numbers that we may need to supplement the statistics that we're showing on our website.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. We'll go now with Emily Purdy from WITF, and next after that will be Lucy Perkins, WESA. Go ahead, Emily.
We've heard from many voters across the state with the same question and concern, which is they think that they may have or know that they did this. They put their birthday on the outside of the envelope where they signed their name of their mailed-in ballot, and instead of the date that they were signing it. So they're concerned that the ballots could be tossed out. What's the rule on that, and what should voters do if they think they might have made this error?
So, and I've heard from voters on this with this question too. Their ballot will not be tossed because they put the wrong date. That's not a basis for rejection. Jonathan, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but there's no basis for rejection on, for putting the wrong date.
Yeah, if the important components on the declaration, of course, they have to sign the declaration. A lot of they have to provide their address. But as the secretary noted, I don't know that there's any statutory, requirement upon the counties to validate that the date that is inserted on the declaration envelope is accurate.
And it doesn't go to eligibility. I mean, obviously, what's most important is that the ballot be cast by X date. So no matter what date you put in there, as long as it's cast by the deadline, and as Jonathan said, you have to sign the declaration. You're asserting in that, that the information provided is true and that you are that person casting it. But there's no again, there's no basis to reject based on the wrong date. I'm seeing in the chat that Mark is giving us some breaking news. Mark Scoforo says that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has taken the signature issue, exercising its King's Bench authority. So I'm very pleased to hear that.
Okay, we'll go to Lucy Perkins from WESA, and next after that will be Howard Monroe from CBS3. Go ahead, Lucy.
Hi, Secretary. Thanks so much for doing the call. I hope you guys are maintaining all of the energy that you need to get through the election season. I'm wondering, could you kind of give an outline for poll watcher applications? I'm told that often officials don't receive those until kind of like the week or so before the election, but of course we're seeing reports that the Trump campaign is kind of staffing up people who will be poll watchers and observing the elections. And I understand you need to get that certification a couple days ahead of time, but have you heard anything from counties of like an influx of those applications, and what does that typically look like in other election years? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Lucy. So first of all, I just want to say we have guidance that's posted that gives an overview of kind of everything you need to know about what poll watchers, the process for becoming a poll watcher and what they can and cannot do. But Jonathan, do you want to just talk through the other parts of the question, both, what's involved? And I have not heard anything from county, aside from the litigation in Philadelphia, which, as you all know, I'm sure, I can't now recall whether it was before the last week's press conference or since, but the court rejected the Trump campaign's lawsuit where they were denied the ability to be present at county election offices. So they agreed with our position on that. But Jonathan, I don't know if you've heard from any other counties that they're seeing an influx or any other issues with poll watcher applications.
No, I haven't. As was noted, that process typically occurs close to the election. The parties and candidates are out, trying to organize and recruit poll watchers. And typically the way the process works, they'll send some formal communication to the county with a list of names that they of the folks who they are designating as poll watchers. And the county will issue a certificate, some sort of form or credential. That process typically does occur much closer to an election. I haven't heard that there's an influx above, what you would typically see in a presidential election year. Poll watchers, based on my experience, are not something that is widely used in most election cycles, but a presidential election cycle obviously is much different, and typically you have a lot more poll watchers. But I haven't heard any information that indicates there's going to be exponentially larger number of poll watchers, at least not at this point.
And I'll just add the federal district court decision that came out in the Trump campaign lawsuit against me and the counties confirmed our perspective on the law, which is that out of county, out of state poll watchers cannot serve as poll watchers. So you have to be registered to vote in the county where you're being appointed, and that was confirmed by the federal district court.
Thank you, Secretary. We're going to go with Howard Monroe from CBS3. And
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We're hearing from folks who have gotten their mail-in ballot. However, they are now have some sort of distrust with the United States Postal Service. So if they've received their ballot and then they change their mind about putting it in the mail, what are their options then? I know about these drop boxes and stuff like that. However, can they show up at the polls on November 3rd?
Great question, and yes. So Act 12 of 2020 passed in March provided a new process. So if a voter has applied and has changed their mind, for any reason, they can choose to go in person. What they should do is they should hold on to the ballot they received in the mail. It's very easy. Just hold on to the whole thing. Don't get rid of any parts of it. Keep the envelopes and the ballot. Go with you, just like you normally do on election day, to your polling place. When you check in with the poll workers, you'll say, I'd like to surrender my mail ballot. I've not cast it. They'll take it. You sign a declaration, affirming that you have not, in fact, already voted. And then they'll let you vote on the regular voting system, just like everybody else. So best way to do it is hold on to your ballot, bring it with you on election day. Let's say you forget, you can still show up on election day. And when you check in with the poll worker, you can set, they'll see it in the poll book, but the voters can also say, I requested a mail-in ballot, but I decided I wanted to vote in person. What can I do? And what they'll do is they'll have those folks vote by provisional ballot. So if you bring your ballot with you, you'll vote by regular machine or hand-marked paper ballot. If you don't bring your ballot with you, you can still vote by provisional ballot. Either way, your vote will be counted so long as you haven't already voted by mail.
Okay, we're going to go with Brian Leonos from Fox News, and then we will wrap up with AJ Vicens of Mother Jones. Go ahead, Brian.
Hi, Secretary. Thanks so much for doing this. My first question to you is wanted to give you a chance to maybe talk about the sanctity, essentially the security of mail-in drop boxes in Pennsylvania, given this lawsuit. If you can just talk about, I'm sure some people, some voters are hesitant now about dropping off their ballots in these drop boxes. Can you go through the process and talk about the security around these boxes and if they're okay for voters to use?
Absolutely, and thank you for that question. Yes, so drop boxes have been used across the country for years, if not decades in some places. And, they're a method of access for eligible voters that, is incredibly confidence building, both for the voter and for the county, because as soon as you deposit it in that drop box, you're done and your date is protected. You don't have to worry about mail delays. You don't have to worry about, any issues. It's already cast as of that time. So the counties that used them in the primary were really pleased with the level of confidence that they brought both to the voter and the county. We have issued guidance, and again, you can access that guidance on our website, and it talks through best practices for these drop boxes. So, they're weatherproof, they're, as indestructible as you can be. They need to be affixed to the, either the ground or a building, or be in a location that is locked. And they have, they're designed specifically to, to the extent possible, withstand, any, attempts to sabotage it. And in addition, we have broken down, again, you can access the full list on our website, but you can see there's chain of custody procedures. So counties either have these also either under video surveillance, or they have them in staffed locations where there's guards nearby. And there's also a process for, people designated, bless you, Jonathan, for people designated by the county, as a pickup authority to go pick up. They usually do it in 2-person teams. They have forms to track those ballots that they're picking up, chain of custody procedures to take them to a secure location at the county election office, and then be counted just like everything else once the counting starts. Jonathan, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Sorry, just unmuting there. Hopefully you can hear me. I don't have a lot to add. I think you did a great job summarizing it, Secretary. We, as Secretary said, we have guidance, and we've actually been getting information directly from the counties about their plans and how they each individual county is going about making sure the drop boxes are secure, that they're monitored, whether it's through technology or by individuals. And also that they're handling that chain of custody. We actually created a form that counties can use, sort of a template to record all of the activity. And also counties are using only designated staff. It's not like everyone has the keys to these drop boxes. They're using tamper evident seals on the drop boxes as well. In the event that someone does try to tamper with it, they will know that occurred. So, all of these security measures in place. And, I've always said, I really believe compared to a postal box, it's probably considerably more secure, and it's going directly into the custody of the county election officials. You don't have to wait, as the secretary said, you don't have to wait on the mail. At that point, you know that it's been dropped off, it's arrived, and it's going directly into the county's custody.
So I'm just going to take this opportunity to remind voters who are casting their ballot in drop boxes, you still have to include the outer envelope. So you've all heard about naked ballots. There's two envelopes that you get when you get your absentee or mail-in ballot. There's the inner secrecy envelope that's mostly white and says official election ballot. And then there's the outer envelope that has that voter's declaration where you need to sign and put your information. Both are needed. So just because you're doing it in a drop box and it doesn't need to go through the mail, the county cannot count your ballot unless they first check your name and make sure that you applied for a ballot. So again, remember, there's so many steps that go into the process before your ballot can be counted. That you need to know that you are eligible to vote and to cast your ballot, and that you've signed the voter's declaration. So if you leave out that outer envelope, not only won't it be counted, but they can't even contact you because they don't know who you are because you haven't included that outer envelope that identifies who you are. So two envelopes, you need both of them for your ballot to be counted.
All right, we're going to wrap up here with a question from AJ Vicens, Mother Jones. Go ahead, AJ.
Hi, good morning, Secretary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, since I'm the last one, and thanks for taking the questions, I was hoping you might address the question from Paul in the chat about Allegheny County and the reports this morning about the 28,000 ballots. But also I have a more general question. I've been talking with election security and election admin experts about the states they're most worried about for a variety of reasons this cycle. And Pennsylvania is the top of their list for some of the reasons you've gone over in this conference call or press conference, but also, sort of the president's focus on the state and some of the misinformation and disinformation that he's sort of surfaced and amplified about Pennsylvania. And I just kind of wanted to give you the chance to respond to this worry that Pennsylvania will be the problem state of this cycle. Thank you so much.
Sure. So I'll respond to the second question, and then Jonathan, if you can give a quick answer about the other question that was asked, if you don't have the chat open, is about Allegheny County, the voters who received incorrect ballots and what we're doing about it. So, but I'll answer the second question first. So Pennsylvania, if you're asking, it sounds to me like you're specifically asking about election security. And Pennsylvania has done so much in the last 2 years that, frankly, I'm surprised to hear this, if that's truly what you're asking about. We have so many layers of security in process, in effect in Pennsylvania, including, obviously we all, from the ballot, from the polling place itself, in the last 2 years, every county has upgraded its voting systems to new voting systems that meet the highest standards of security, have gone through penetration testing, have gone through much more stringent testing and requirements that we created in Pennsylvania that are stricter than federal requirements, and all have a voter verifiable paper ballot. We've been doing pilot risk limiting audits on top of the statutory audits that are required by law. We expect to do another pilot audit after the November election. And then, of course, from the systems standpoint, we have all the best practices in place to protect our networks, to make sure that they protect our voter registration database. We do tabletop exercises. We work very closely with the federal, state, and local partners. We have a fantastic executive level interagency work group on election security and preparedness. And actually, Jonathan and I were both in a meeting with them yesterday, which includes PEMA and the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, the Office of Homeland Security, the National Guard, and DMVA, Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, the Pennsylvania State Police, at the Governor's Office, Department of State folks, to talk about, even on top of all the other measures that we've been collaborating on, we're now adding a new component to expand our preparedness for on the ground issues. So, we didn't have a chance to get into, and these press conferences, it's a good thing we're going to twice a week because they're never going to be long enough otherwise. Voter intimidation, I know is a concern of many people. So we are going to be working very closely with all those partners I just talked about to make sure that we are prepared ahead of time and able to respond quickly to on the ground issues in the days leading up to on election day or following election day. So really every possible place. I often talk about election security as being like any other form of national security. You could have the strongest Navy in the world, but if you overlook, the air or the land, you're still going to be vulnerable. We look at election security across the board in every realm. And I'm so proud of the partners that we work with at the federal, state, and local level to make sure that every voter in Pennsylvania can have tremendous confidence that their vote will be counted securely and safely and counted accurately. So, Jonathan, would you like to quickly, I know we're beyond time, but quickly give an overview of,
Sure.
I know that you've spoken with Allegheny County, or a team has, and anything to share.
Yes. Yes, we learned last night from Allegheny County that approximately 28,000 ballots, incorrect ballots, had gone out to voters. The county reached out to us. Our conversation has been focused on how we assist them with the resolution. And earlier this morning, in fact, right before this call, Allegheny County made a public announcement sort of discussing the details. And I don't want to get out in front of that. I believe it's posted on their website. It's already been widely reported this morning. But the important thing for voters to know is that the Allegheny County Board of Elections has a resolution. They expect that they'll be able to send replacement ballots out to voters by next week. We, of course, will be working closely with them to support that effort in every way we can, systematically through the SURE system, to make sure that everything runs smoothly with those replacement ballots. I think the other important thing to note too, and I believe Allegheny County noted this in their announcement, you can only cast one ballot. This is not going to risk voters having more than one ballot cast. The county's taking an additional step, segregating those. They know which ballots they are. They've worked with the vendor who made the error, the mailhouse vendor who made the error, and they have isolated the affected voters. So they'll be able to send replacement ballots, and they'll also be able to reconcile that to ensure that the correct ballot is counted in the end.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to wrap it up for today. We will be back here on Friday morning, so watch for that advisory. A couple of reminders. First of all, if you would like to ask a question, please indicate that when you RSVP. That's how we are compiling the list of people to call on. The other thing is, for this Friday only, our press conference will be at 10 a.m. rather than 10:30. So make note of that if you need to include that in your planning schedule. I think that's everything for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.